This week in Return of the Dead, What Was Me have released a brand new song titled Ghost.
I never lied to you, brought out the worst in me, and you were never one for dealing with reality. With all you put me through, still never lied to you. But I've learned to love letting go.
Woe Is Me's last release was the American Dream EP in 2013, Best Buy exclusive, before they disbanded. The band then went on to reunite in July of 2022 with former members, of which there are many, Michael Bond, Hans Allegood, Andrew Payano, Kevin Hansen, Austin Thornton, and brothers Ben and Corey Ferris. Now, Marcos.
Can I stop you real quick?
You may.
I don't remember a single thing about the American Dream EP, but a cornerstone of the memories in my mind is that was a Best Buy exclusive. I will never forget that fact.
It's because it was like the last time a CD being in Best Buy mattered. Like it was literally like 6 days before it stopped mattering, that EP dropped.
Just the last thing I'll ever remember about that era of this band. And we're back with what is essentially...
Can't even buy CDs at Best Buy anymore.
I don't think you can. Yeah. What is essentially the OG version of What Was Me, except Hans Allegood is also on vocals.
No, Hans Allegood is actually the OG vocalist. He joined and left the band almost immediately.
What?
Yeah, for real.
I thought Tyler Carter was always OG.
Hans was in first, and then Tyler Carter,
Well,
and
this
then
is
Hans
really
came back.
Fucking with my memory.
Right? Per the all-knowing Wikipedia. And I also believe that Andrew Payano joined later on, and they, if I read correctly, were a member of Abandon All Ships.
Fuck your facts. What's most important here is that Austin Thornton is in this band still.
Let's fucking go. So I think what's fascinating about maybe this individual reunion and this segment as a whole is just how fucking many of these we've had recently. Like, I'm at the point now where a band like Woe Was Me announces their reunion, and it's like I don't even bat an eye.
Nah.
And that doesn't mean that I'm not like excited or interested. It just means like, who isn't back at this point? You know what I mean?
You kind of...
There's about 4 bands left to reunite that came out of the Warped Tour scene.
Yeah, we got another one back this year. Hey, guess who's playing fucking Blue Ridge? The Color Morale. Like, that was one of the other 4 that remained.
We just talked about Icy Stars last week. It's like these bands, like, they feel like they've disappeared. I mean, granted, What Was Me's been gone a lot longer than a lot of these other bands we discussed.
It's actually crazy. 10 years, pretty much.
But it feels like it's in the same vein as a lot of what we've seen recently. I mean, granted, the Color Morale's last album was probably like 2014.
Man, when was the last time things like this surprised you? And I'm not talking like My Chem is back. I mean,
that was literally immediately where I was going to go.
Well, I mean more so like bands in the scene. Because like...
You mean smaller than My Chem, so it's not like quite as earth-shattering?
Yeah. Because I think for me, it's like sort of like the peak of bands coming back that I never thought we would ever get back was probably Under Oath.
That's a very good example. Yeah, I do like that one.
And then when Under Oath came back, it felt like it opened up a floodgates or like a secret floodgate of sorts where it was like any band that came back after Under Oath was like, well, yeah, because like look at what Under Oath is doing. Like Under Oath is back on top. They're back making money. And now you're right. Like when What Was Me comes back, it's like, well, no fucking duh, you're back. Like you're leaving money on the table, or it just wouldn't make sense for you not to come back money regardless of the fact.
Right.
Like,
that's what I mean. It's just
take Attack. You know, that's a band that's back. Like,
right. Or even like think Drugs like that. Like if you told me Drugs was going to come back, I would have lost my mind. But yeah, almost in a similar vein, it's like me hearing about Drugs coming back is almost just like, it's just another news story, right?
Right. And like, honestly, at some point, Chiodos will be back for a 5th time.
And a lot of this, I think, is the festival culture lately, where it's almost like a competition to see who you can fucking dig up from the grave. And like, I think we just got an announcement like that the Bled were going to be playing like Furnace Fest or something. Yeah. And it's like, all right.
And it's like,
sure.
But that's what I mean, though. It's like, the Bled are back, Sam.
Right, but it no longer feels as powerful, right?
Exactly.
Because it's like, of course they are. Yeah. Like I when we were young, Fest had to have had one of these, and I feel like I've just blanked it out of my memory. You know what I mean? But The Academy is, I think, like
Pierce the
feels
Veil.
like, yeah, Pierce the Veil a little bit. That's true.
Yeah.
All right, but let's circle back and let's talk about What Was Me real quick. This brand new track, Ghost. How'd you feel about it overall?
I actually sort of feel about this song the same way I feel about the first song from every other band that's come back.
How's that?
It's okay. It's fine. It's mostly fun. It's kind of mostly where we left off with these sorts of bands. But it's definitely a little more modern. And that's sort of what I mean by that. Like Under Oath come back and they sound a little bit more modern.
It is a strange
Attack
thing
come back a little more modern.
for these bands to be in this position where they return, but they can't just run it back to 2013 because it's like a whole decade. Like you'd sound antiquated at that point. So it's like, What Was Me is back. And we sort of talked about this similarly with like Attack, like you just said. And they kind of sound like what a lot of other bands are doing right now. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, and they're running the Wage War playbook. You know what I mean?
And don't get me wrong, like Attack came back and they did some fun stuff. And we touched on it when we discussed briefly Dark Waves in our latest episode of the show. And the difference now is like we're on this new EP and there's less of that risk or whatever and less of what made that band unique. And I'm not saying like What Was Me are back and they sound completely non-unique or generic or whatever.
Right. Like there are aspects of this band, you know, within Hanson, Michael Bond specifically, and their breakdown feels marginally throwback to the last decade.
That's a great breakdown. I love it. It's good. It's probably my favorite part of the song.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I think I like the melody and think the problem with the breakdown is immediately after I listened to this song, I was spit out like Micah Relocate, Old Woe Is Me, and A Day to Remember songs from like that era of the
in the
band.
Spotify shuffle.
And it's like there was just something in the water back then, and bands lost a little bit of the magic when it came to like trying to reproduce these. So it feels a bit. It's not bad, but it feels a bit perfunctory in a way that it's like, this is the breakdown, you know what I mean? But it just doesn't capture the same magic that it used to.
Yeah, it's all just a little bit more predictable, for better or worse.
And it's not really a What Was Me problem. I think it's more of a like genre problem at this point, which I think a lot of bands try to incorporate breakdowns, but nobody really has as fun with it anymore. So it just feels like it's there.
You sort of touched on it where it was like, I don't know. It's one of those things where they could come back and pick up where they left off in 2013, but instead of it sounding novel, like how See You Space Cowboys sound nowadays.
Right, because that feels like an interpretation of the music that they grew up listening. It's very hard to like mimic yourself in a way, you know? And then I feel like bands get in their head and it's like, well, we can't do that. We've got to, you know, sound like a modern metalcore band.
Yeah, we have to get some airtime on Sirius XM. And I'm not...
The battle there is to not strip yourself of your personality in the process, right?
Right, and I'm not demonizing any band who is doing anything like that. Any of these bands returning from the grave, so to speak. But at the same time, it's interesting because we're going to talk about them shortly. I get more excited about a band like Balance and Composure, who I have less of a like. I'm less endeared to that band than I am What Was Me, but they come back and they just sound more like what I would expect Balance and Composure to sound like, and What Was Me come back sounding like less of what Was Me should sound like,
or at the very least your memory of them.
Right. But again, it's not to say that I'm not happy this band is back and that I'm not happy with this new song. I truly am. I like this. I'm happy What Was Me are back. But also, it's interesting nowadays where it's like kind of the same song and dance. Again, we talked about it, like after Under Oath, all of this just kind of feels like I've been here before type thing.
I think the real challenge here, right? And it's not a problem particular to this band, but with a lot of bands that are sort of coming back, is what is it that you have to say in 2023, right? Like I'm not necessarily saying you have to justify your return, because like for all intents and purposes, it's cool to have the band back and I like the song.
Yeah.
But What Was Me carries, I think in a lot of people's minds, such a legacy. And so much of that legacy feels like pushing the boundaries forward within a very specific time period. So when a band like that comes back, artistically, you're sort of curious, like what they could do now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm sort of learning more often than not that I sort of have to level my expectations with these comebacks and maybe just sort of enjoy them for what they are.
Yeah.
Because they're a lot of fun in having these bands return, but they're coming back in such a different climate, and they're maybe not necessarily in the same position they were, right? You know what I mean?
Are you saying that I'm curious, like, are you there already, or is that where you would ultimately like to be?
What Was Me would have to change my mind with like a song that says like, okay, no, this is like a fucking like
A revelation.
Like this band coming back is a shift within like the scene, right? Which kind of like, you know, you talk about Under Oath. Under Oath kind of felt like that, right? Like hit or miss. Under Oath returning with like a brand new song was like a shift, right? It was like big. And like, I think there's a combination now of all these bands returning all at once. And like,
I think I'm already there.
They almost have to like stand out in their own reunion among all the other reunions.
But I guess that's sort of what I meant is like, I feel like I'm already personally there. Like I see Woe Is Me are coming back and I'm like, awesome. On to the next one. Not in the sense that like I'm ready to move on already, but it's more like I'm not getting too hype. I've tempered my expectations. I'm probably going to like whatever they do, but this is like, I recognize that this is not going to change my life type thing.
And another slight thing that's holding me back, just one final thing on What Was Me, is how much I adored that EP from the Villa.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, that for me felt like a really fascinating step forward for Michael Bond. And now it feels a little bit like this is nowhere near as exciting as that was for my...
Yeah, no, respectfully, I'm fully in alignment with you on that one. I think that I take any song off of that Villa EP over this one, but that's not to say that any of those are bad songs. Like, it's just, like, I guess it's not to say that the
This
new
is a
What
bad
Was Me
song.
song is bad by any means.
Right.
It just means that, like, oh, I think that EP maybe was a little bit more creative, or maybe a little bit more what I'm currently looking for in music. But
So then alternatively, Balance and Composure also came back and released 2 new songs, Savior Mode.
Now that you might die, I find it selfish to pay you with wanting closure, 'cause it is close, I know. Mr. Sacrifice.
And last to know, Balance and Composure's last release was the Slow Heart 7-inch in 2017, and they went on a farewell tour in 2019. But I think they were kind of nebulous about, are we broken up? Are we finished or whatever?
it's like the last band to announce a farewell tour before COVID hit, and that didn't suddenly matter anymore.
Incredible timing. In addition to the new track, the band also announced a plan for a few reunion shows. So what's interesting is you go into What Was Me and you have like all of these expectations built on like how you feel about that band. And then I come into something like Balance and Composure and I'm like, I don't even think I ever checked this band out when they were around. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But like, I see a lot of people excited that they're back and I'm like, okay, let me try to find out why. And I go listen to these 2 songs and I'm like, I get it. This is fucking dope. Welcome back,
Yeah.
Balance and Composure.
And it's not even one of those things where I have to question, like, are we picking up where we left off? Or is, like, just the general like attitude around it. You can see that people are just happy this band sort of sounds like themselves still.
Right. And it's like, I can't put all of my feelings into whether this band is making a statement of a comeback, if they sound different, if they sound too the same, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's like I just checked out 2 songs from a band I'd never heard of on the basis that they have a legacy that people seem to really adore them. And I'm like, oh yeah, they're fucking cool as shit. They're sad and miserable and
They're so sad.
so depressing, but holy shit, does that work in this specific subgenre of pop punk? So that's this week in Return of the Dead.
I'll also say that like one of these songs, I think only one of them had a music video.
It was Savior Mode.
And I think that does help. Like what I really don't, and I'm not like throwing any shade Woe Is Me's way. Woe Is Me's way sounds like such a potential tongue twister.
Yeah.
It's more so like, if this is an event, I need you to treat it like one. Balance and Composure came back, and even though music videos aren't as popular as they were fucking 20 years ago, like they still matter somewhat, especially to me. And it feels more like part of this whole event, right?
Like you're underselling your return in a way.
Exactly.
Right?
And I think
like it should be an event, but now you've minimized it.
Right.
And it'll be funny if by the time people hear this, it's like Monday morning and Woe Is Me have dropped the video, but
And
you'll
I'm
understand
sure.
at the time we don't have it, right?
But I also have never liked that approach. And I'm sure logistically it makes a ton of sense for a lot of different reasons, but none of those
And financially, it might make sense for a myriad of reasons.
To me, none of those matter though. So I look at that and I'm like, okay, band is unprepared for their return. And I'm not applying that just to
Needed to get in a warehouse at a central location and just run the energy.
how cool would it be just to know what this band looks like right now? And like,
Yeah.
I'm sure they had a promo pic.
They
but
did
like,
have a promo pic, yeah.
I want to see what it feels like to play this song. I want to know what I'm getting into if I see this band live again, type of thing, right?
Sure.
And we didn't get that, and now it's like, okay, well, it's the same approach as 15 other bands that just came back.
And by comparison, Balance and Composure really do sell you on their particular energy with their video. That's a good point.
And it's like, hey, no, like we're back. It's all of us. You remember fucking Todd and Tim? I don't know who the fuck's in this band,
Right? Like Sean.
yeah. And I don't know, like it's funny though, because again, what I mentioned earlier, it's just like I didn't give a fuck about Balance and Composure in 2017 or 2019 when they broke up, but I'm more excited for their return than I am Woe Is Me. I still like Woe Is Me, happy they're back, but it's a different approach that really sells you.
And I think it sort of goes back to what I said earlier. It's that level of expectations. It's almost like fascinating to take a band like Balance and Composure and put it in this segment because you and I never had any relationship with them. But Woe Is Me, there's like a history, right? So it's like Balance and Composure could have never disappointed us because we never had any expectations, right?
True.
Woe Is Me have a mountain of expectations and are almost set up for failure unless they do something like massive.
To some degree. Again, like, I don't know, like maybe I'm not conscious of those expectations personally, but again, like at least with the last batch of bands that have returned, I have no expectations. I don't think I do. Like the Color Morale are back. They'll release a new song and like, I'm going to move on with my life. I'm going to listen to it. I'm happy the band is back. Hopefully it's great.
Kind of tragic when you really say it out loud, honestly.
But like, right?
Bands have, in a sense, killed the excitement of reunions, which is an insane thing to think about.
Well, I mean, even Balance and Composure are absolutely guilty of that. Like, all right, guys, you went away for 4 years, barely. Welcome back, I guess. Like, I don't know. Like, there's a difference where it's like the potentially greatest band of all time comes back in My Chemical Romance. Like, yeah, there's a lot of expectations there. There's a lot of hype. 6, 7, 8 years ago, Under Oath are back. Like, holy shit, I never expected that to happen. That's a different level. Well, now it's like, why the fuck are you guys back?
It's lost its novelty.
Yeah. And you're right. Like, somehow bands have killed the novelty of returning from the dead. And it's equal parts fascinating and also like not that significant in the grand scheme of things, I guess.
It's almost like the way that pop culture references to things from a certain era created this nostalgia, but now that feels like a tired trope. Like, remember Blockbuster? Yeah, shut the fuck up.
Right. We don't
I'm over it.
don't need a Blockbuster show in 2023. We don't
Right.
need that.
Need a Hollywood video show.
What we do need is for Woe Is Me to reintroduce the CD to the Best Buy.
Best Buy exclusive will always be CD. Would be the craziest fucking thing of all time.
Go purchase. What's the Best Buy
Please.
stock? BB.
Maybe.